What's happening? A good Monday morning to all of you. Thanks for joining me. As always, we will get to the draft in a little bit, but we start with the breaking news. And you know by now the breaking news about 25 minutes ago, Christian Barmore and the New England Patriots have agreed on a contract extension. It is a 4-year extension, max value of $92 million. The guaranteed money is $41.8 million guaranteed. Now, Mark Daniels just posted that deal worth a maximum of $92 million is the 7th richest in the NFL among defensive tackles. His $41.8 million in guaranteed money is the 8th highest among players at the position. Doug Kyed says that Barmore's contract is the 2nd largest in Patriots history, only behind Tom freaking Brady. Christian Barmore getting, as they all say by now, the bag. And if you've been looking at the defensive tackle market this offseason, you would have noticed that the market is exploding. Interior defensive linemen, their value within the league continues to climb. And we see Barmore, only 24 years old, coming off of a season where he looked like an all-pro the last 2 months, getting this kind of contract extension. It is justified. It is deserved. And it is a great thing for not only Barmore, but it is a great thing for the New England Patriots. Interior defensive line pass rush is one of the most valuable things that you can get in the NFL. Think about Tom Brady back in the day, right? What would bother Tom the most? Interior pass rush up the middle. That's how you truly bother quarterbacks. And that's why when you draft somebody like Drake May who can extend plays, that's why you do it. Because in 2024, in the NFL, you need quarterbacks to break contain. You need quarterbacks to get away from that interior pressure. So now Christian Barmore is locked down here in New England, signed, sealed, and delivered to a gigantic contract. I absolutely freaking love this. This was one of the top priorities this offseason. I wrote about it at Boston Sports Journal. I talked about it several times on this podcast. To get Barmore done, to get him this big money deal was a top priority for Elliot Wolf, this front office, and Gerard Mayo. Mission accomplished. They get the deal done. They don't mess around. Think about this roster. How many? Think about this roster and how many. Some are saying my audio is a little off. Is that a little bit better? Check 1, check 2. Check 1, check 2. Audio a little off. Underwater today. That's not great. I was off to a really good start, too. Does it sound weird? You tell me, guys. Does it sound weird or does it sound better? If I have a microphone issue, still sounds off. Not great. All right. Hold on. This is going to be awesome. Talks amongst yourselves. Well, see, someone says I'm fine. Sounds off, sounds different. the audio is still off. I'm using the same equipment. I was in a flow. I sound echoey. I was in a flow. I don't know why I sound different. I sound the same to me. I sound back to normal now. Sounds the same as always. You sound fine. Okay. Well, I apologize. I was really flowing. It's not that bad to disrupt. The podcast could be better. It's a little bit off, but not bad. It's off, but it is not a problem. Your voice is always soothing. People need to refresh their streams. All right. Back to the business at hand. That little disruption. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a subscribe as well. Rate and review. I don't want the stuff off, by the way, guys. If it sounds off, then you let me know. It's a little bit better now. So I don't know why it would be sounding weird or different. All right, so blue chip potential on this roster. When you look at the blue chip potential on this roster, there are not a lot of guys on this roster that you could say, that can really impact the game. Could really impact the game at a high level, right? And when you look at the blue chip, roster of some other teams that are top teams in the NFL, They have several blue chip guys on their roster. The Patriots, when you look at this roster as currently constituted, now hopefully you get at least one of them right in the draft with Drake May, and we'll get to the draft a little bit later. But you have to keep your best players. You have to keep the guys who have at least potential to be blue chip guys in this league. Christian Gonzalez has the potential to be a blue chip guy. Obviously, Barmore has that potential to be a true blue chip game-changing type guy. And when you have those kinds of players, especially coming off of a 4-win season, coming off of that 4-win season last year, you have to do everything you can to keep your best players on this roster, not just for 2024, but extending far into the future. And that's what the Patriots accomplished today by getting this extension done with Christian Barmore. He's 24 years old. He's still 2-3 years away from his prime, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. You know, you're 2 or 3 years away from your prime and you're getting this deal. That speaks volumes to how good he was last year and how much Elliot Wolf and company believe in him. DeMarcus Covington, Mayo, everybody in that room, they believe that Barmore can truly be a top 5, top 8 defensive tackle. The way he looked the last 2 months last year, he looked like a top 5 guy at that position. So you lock up your blue chip dudes. You lock up the guys that can have massive impact to your team, massive impact for this defense, and massive impact on wins and losses. Gonzalez and Barmore, if they're healthy, they will have incredible impact on the W's and the L's moving forward for the next 4 or 5 years for this football team. This is fantastic news. Fantastic news for the Patriots. It's fantastic news for Christian Barmore. And here's the thing. They continue to take care of their guys. They continue to take care of the guys that have earned it. They've deserved it, that are the talent on this team, right? They made sure they took care of Mike Onwenu. Deal done. They took care of Kyle Duggar. Deal done. Now they take care of Christian Barmore. And they're not only taking care of their own guys, they're taking care of their own guys at the top of the market. Now, I think Kyle Duggar was an overpay. But again, I'm not going to lose my mind over an overpay by a couple of million because you kept your good player. You kept the guy that you believe is part of this core, that is part of this foundation. And with Barmore, Onwenu, and Duggar signing these long-term contract extensions at the top of the market, it just speaks volumes to what this team is doing now. This is different, folks. This is different. And I know some people were trying to argue that, oh, you know, Bill Belichick would have signed Mike Onwenu. Hold on. They're trying to tell me that it sounds like it's coming through. This is killing me. That's what it is. Somebody nailed it. Mike N., I think you nailed it. Hello, hello, hello to the world. Does the microphone sound better? For some reason, it was going through my internal mic and not the external mic. My fault. My goodness. All right. I am now on the correct microphone now that we're about 8 minutes in. So 4 years, $92 million. 4-year, $92 million deal, $41.8 million guaranteed. Defensive market is freaking exploding. The defensive tackle market is just through the roof, and you have to match those numbers. You've got to match those numbers, and that's what the Patriots did. They're paying Christian Barmore like he is one of the best defensive tackles in the game. They're paying Kyle Duggar like he is one of the best safeties in the game. They're paying Mike Onwenu like he is one of the best offensive linemen in the game. And we can talk about, oh, Belichick would have paid Onwenu. Belichick might have paid this guy. You cannot tell me, after what we've seen in the philosophy from Bill Belichick, you cannot tell me that these 3 guys would have signed these 3 extensions in this same offseason with Bill Belichick as the GM. You can't tell me that. You can tell me it, but I'm going to disagree with you. There's just no way. There's no way that I can look at Onwenu, Duggar, and Barmore all signing contract extensions at the top of the market at their particular position and say, we would have had this same offseason with Belichick. I don't think these 3 guys would have gotten these deals. And so it's Elliot Wolf, it's Gerard Mayo sticking with the foundation, the guys that they believe in, by giving them the contracts that they deserve, by giving them market value. This isn't, oh, go see if you can get more. Oh, we're going to try to pinch a penny here or there. This is not Jacoby Myers, right? If this front office was running the shop last year, you can't tell me that Jacoby Myers is playing in Vegas right now. You can't tell me that DeAndre Hopkins is playing in Tennessee right now. How aggressive financially that this team has been, sticking by their best players, the players that they believe in. Jacoby Myers would have been here. And of course, I think DeAndre Hopkins would have got the deal that he was looking for before he left New England to go down to Tennessee and finish things off. So when you look at this, and Josh Gemini jumps in with a super chat, Belichick might have done it. Remember Wilfork. Again, I'm not arguing that Belichick would have signed maybe one of these guys, maybe even two of these guys, but I don't think we see Belichick sign all three of Onwenu, Duggar, and Barmore. I don't think we see all three sign the extensions that they got this offseason if Bill Belichick was running things here in New England. It's not a shot at Bill as much as it's just me telling you what I think would have happened. And I think it makes a lot of sense when you're coming off of a 4-win team to keep your best players. I know some people joke around and go, oh, they're keeping a lot of players from a 4-win team. Yeah, if they're good football players, who cares? I couldn't care less if they won 2 games last year. You have to start somewhere. You're not going to be able to just reset the entire roster. And there are good players and very good players on bad teams. We see it every single year. We see it every single year in the NFL. We see it every single year in every single sport in this country. Just because the team stunk doesn't mean that every single person, all of the 53, have stunk as well. So you have to build a foundation, and you take your most talented players and you take care of those guys. And that's what they have done this offseason. Nick, what about Judon? Super chat from Ryan. Thank you, Ryan, for jumping in with the super chat. It is very much appreciated. Again, if you want to jump to the front of the line with a question or a comment, you can do so by sending that super chat my way. I would think Judon, he didn't get traded over the weekend. And what we've learned from Wolf and Mayo is they have said we want to take care of our guys. And they have gone on record. Mayo's gone on record talking about Judon. They want Judon here. I would have to imagine Judon will be next. Since he wasn't traded over the weekend for a draft pick, I have to imagine Matthew Judon will be getting some kind of extra sugar on the contract. Whether it's a bump this year and maybe add another season for next year, whether it's an extension, I don't know. But I think we should absolutely anticipate, now that we are past draft, we should absolutely anticipate Matthew Judon getting some kind of deal from this front office. All right, don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, don't forget to rate and review if you're listening to us on Spotify and Apple Pods. Apologize for the audio issues that started off this podcast, but now we're alive and kicking. We've got the regular microphone working. It sounds good. We are ready to roll. If you're just jumping in, we start with Christian Barmore. We will eventually move to the draft. But Adam Schefter is reporting 4 years, $92 million, $41.8 million of that money is guaranteed. The defensive tackle market has been outrageous this offseason. Not saying it's bad, outrageous, but outrageous as far as how much money is being dumped into that position. And here we are with Barmore getting the bag, a bag that he deserves after playing great football the last 2 months, 2.5 months of the season. And we have to remember back in 2022, when he wasn't the same guy, he was banged up all year. He had a very promising rookie season. Looked like he was going to become a real player in this league. 2022, he was banged up, took a step back. Then he was healthy last year, and the dude looked simply dominant in the final 2.5 months. So the Patriots are keeping a 24-year-old up-and-coming stud defensive lineman. That is nothing to me but great news. And they continue to take care of their own. All right, I got a lot more on this. Charlie jumps in with a super chat, a $10 super chat. Thank you, Charlie. Excellent signing culture-wise.
It's funny. When Barmore was drafted, remember, he slid down to the second round, and some of that was people wondering if he was mature enough. Did he have the maturity level that would allow him to succeed in the NFL? And so far, we have not heard a cross word about Barmore's maturity, how he's handled things off the field, how he's handled things on the field. From what we know, he has been a model citizen as a football player and as a human being. And all he has done is put the work in and continue to improve. Now, there's always the risk that when you give a young guy this kind of a bag, that he's going to fall off. But that's where you have to trust this front office. That's where you have to trust Mayo and Covington. They know Barmore. They have to believe that he has the maturity. They have to believe that he's going to continue to work his ass off to be one of the best in the league at what he does. And that's why you give this guy that kind of a contract, because you believe he's got his head on right. He's focused. He's determined to do the right things to give you the results that you want from him. Tremendous deal. Elite Gray Fox jumps in with a super chat. Belichick would have done it for a defensive player only. So maybe the argument is he would have paid Duggar. I don't know if he would have paid Duggar. We remember how he handled Devin McCourty, right? I'm not so sure. Would Belichick, and here's another question, would he have used the transition tag to kind of hold that leverage on Duggar? Or would Belichick have let Duggar go somewhere else and talk to other teams and try to up that value? Look, we don't know. I'm just going off of history. And history tells us that three guys at the tippity top of the market deal-wise, yes, we saw that in 2021, you could argue, right? We got two of those guys with Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Yes, they signed Stephon Gilmore to a top-of-the-market deal. I'm not saying it never happened with Bill. And he re-signed his own players at top-of-the-market deals, right? Gronkowski. I believe Hernandez at that time was pretty much near the top of the market. When McCourty eventually got done, he was a really good contract. But three in one offseason at the very top of the financial payroll, it's difficult for me to believe that we would have seen this same kind of approach. I think it's Wiley 5. I had faith in Wolf since the second Bill left. I don't know how people had such little faith in him. Love the show. Excited to see what you do until camp. Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate the super chat. And, Wolf, here's the thing. I'm not going to tell you that Wolf is going to be unbelievable at his job, that the Patriots are going to win several Super Bowls with Elliot Wolf, that he's going to make all the right moves at all the right times. But the one thing that drove me crazy through this offseason was the idea that these guys were just completely unready to do their jobs. Now, Gerard Mayo, I understand that. You can certainly question that because this is Gerard Mayo's first shot at being a head coach. He was never a coordinator. And I think it's fair to wonder, okay, is Gerard going to be up to the task? And we won't know that until this season starts, right? But to paint this as Elliot Wolf, and I know it's been painted by some, that Elliot Wolf was completely unprepared, that they were flying by the seat of their pants. That's just ridiculous. We don't have to go crazy and say Elliot Wolf is going to be a home run when we don't know he's going to be a home run. But we also don't have to be as drastic going to the other side and saying this guy is completely unprepared. He's a newbie. He doesn't know what he's doing. I touched on that last week. I heard multiple people last week in the media say, oh, well, I wouldn't trust Elliot Wolf to pull off a deal like Monty Ossenfort did last year in the draft, right? By moving down and then moving back up. I don't trust a new GM to pull off that kind of move. Those people forgot that Monty Ossenfort was a new GM last year when he made those moves. So sometimes it just gets a little bit outrageous for me. And that's why we try to keep it a little bit different here. And that's why we try to give you the alternative at the Nick Gatto Show. I don't try to go bananas on either side, right? Yes, there's emotion. Yes, we get excited for certain things. Yes, I think this deal is great for Christian Barmore. But as far as Elliot Wolf, don't sit there and tell me like we've got a guy in the 10th grade who's running this football team. Elliot Wolf has been in football forever. He's been in football his entire life. And we don't think he knows how to work the phones. We don't think he knows how to work a draft trade. We don't think that he knows how to sign guys and spend, like, what are we doing here? They didn't hire somebody off the street. It was two things. Like, oh, Elliot Wolf is unprepared for this. Oh, Jonathan Kraft is running the football operation. Like, those two things have frustrated me. Elliot Wolf continues to run this football operation. Elliot Wolf was more than prepared to have this job. He interviewed for the GM jobs across the league multiple times. He spent his entire life in football. The guy knows how to do what he's got to do. It doesn't mean he's going to make all the right decisions. It doesn't mean he's going to lead this team to a Super Bowl. But what it does mean is that he's not sitting in the office Monday through Friday going, what should I do now? Oh, I'm supposed to call a team? Is that how this works? I got to call the other team to try to make a trade? Like, we don't have to paint him as some doofus. The dude is experienced. The dude is legit. His resume is legit. And what the Patriots have done, and I'm going to get to the draft in a couple of minutes. I just want to close out a couple more things on this Barmore deal that I love, and I think Patriots fans should be freaking ecstatic with this Barmore extension. The Patriots are taking care of their defensive core. We all know, we all agree that this team starts with their defense right now. They have to rebuild that offense. And we saw in the draft that they are focused on trying to rebuild this offense. But what you do with this football team is you take care of the better players, especially on the side of the football that you are going to depend on. Until those guys that you just drafted develop and become, hopefully, good to really good football players. And in the case of Drake May, hopefully becomes a perennial Pro Bowl type quarterback, top 5, top 8 guy. Until those guys get on the rails and you can truly trust them to run this team, you've got to put all of what you've got into this defense, because this defense last year was a top 10 DVOA defense. And if you're going to win games, you're going to need this defense to play really, really well. So you take care of the defensive core. You take the best part of your football team. You keep your best players on that side of the ball. And then meanwhile, you start to rebuild the other side offensively. And I think that's what we're seeing, right? We're seeing Elliot Wolf take care of the defensive core, rebuild the offense. That's really the secret sauce. The secret sauce is to have this defense continue to improve, sprinkle in some more talent when need be, focus on the offense, and rebuild that puppy. Because I believe with that defense, the way they played last year, if they had an average offense last year, we're talking a 7-win team, 8-win team. Now, I'm not going to tell you the record this year when we're sitting here in April. But all I can say is I agree with this idea that, hey, our defense was really freaking good last year. Let's continue that momentum and keep the best players on that defense intact to this roster. And let's try to at least build our offense to an average level, because if we do that, we're going to be a better football team than we were last year. It's not rocket science. So take care of the defensive core, and that's what they're doing. Give us that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. One more thing. Are they spending money? I hate to be smarmy, but are they spending money now? We talked about this at the beginning of the offseason. Everybody wants to act as if there is a 5-alarm fire at the beginning of March. Simmer down now. Simmer down now. You have to re-sign some of your best players. Owenu got a big-time contract. Duggar got a big-time contract. Barmore gets a big-time contract. And I know there are certain people that believe these contracts don't necessarily mean as much than a contract if you brought somebody from the outside. I think that's outrageous. Money is money. If you are renting a house and you decide to buy the same house, did you spend on the house, even though you were renting the house and you were living in the house? When you bought the house, did you spend that money? Does it matter whether you buy the house that you live in that you're comfortable with because it's a great house, or you should go out and find another house and spend money on that house because it's not the house you've lived in? What are we doing? The fact is they have spent money. They have spent lots of money this offseason. So I think we need to keep the whole cheap conversation. We can toss that to the side. We can safely put that away for at least now. Do not tell me this football team is not spending. Do not tell me that this owner is being a cheapskate. Don't tell me any of that, because they have spent a boatload of money this offseason, and they might spend more money. Let's not forget, they offered Calvin Ridley $40 million guaranteed. Let's not forget, they were just talking. They were just talking to the 49ers last week about trading for Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk wants $27 million average annual value. So this team was prepared to pay Calvin Ridley and Brandon Ayuk, okay? We're talking top money, folks. And they still made these other moves, spending top money. So we can punt. We can punt that idea of this being a cheap ownership this offseason and not spending money. We can punt that idea to the moon because it's silly. All right, I will get to the draft. First, Nelson Lloyd. What are your thoughts on this year's wide receiver room? I will get to that as part of the draft conversation, Nelson. I will just tell you this before I dive into the details. I like what they did at wide receiver in the draft. I really do. And then we found out more about what the plan was. And I think many people, might be disappointed that the true plan A did not come to fruition. But I think what they did, the wide receivers that they drafted, made a lot of sense. I'll tell you why when we get fully into it. Do you think Wolf made enough competition, or do you think they need to add a few more wide receivers to push the guys who are there right now? I am fine with their depth, Nelson. Like, I'm fine. I'm fine with it. Do I want a wide receiver one? Yes. I would still like to get somebody in here like Brandon Ayuk. I would still like to entertain the idea of T. Higgins. I would still like to entertain the idea of Cortland Sutton. I would still love that number one receiver in that room. But I think what they've done is they've continued to build 2 through 5 while they try to chase that number one, right? They offered Calvin Ridley the $40 million guaranteed, didn't work out. I can't complain about them walking away from that deal, honestly. They chased Brandon Ayuk last week, maybe Deebo Samuel. You heard those conversations. So they were talking to San Francisco about trading for a wide receiver. We've heard from Tom Curran and Phil Perry and Greg Bedard and Burt Breer, and all of these guys have said that Elliot Wolf has been trying to land that number one wide receiver. So I think because they haven't been able to land the big fish, so to speak, what they've done is they've focused on, okay, let's improve the room. Let's improve the room 2 through 5. If we can't get that number one guy right now, this second, let's do what we can do to improve that room elsewhere. Let's not run it back. Let's get rid of Devontae Parker. Let's bring guys in that will likely shove Juju Smith-Schuster down the depth chart if he's not completely out of here by the season kicking off. Let's improve what we can improve. So we can't get that number one guy just yet. We want that number one guy. We've tried to get that number one guy. But until we get him, let's just make everything else better. And I don't know. I think that makes sense. Makes sense to me. All right, before I go any further, I'm going to get into the draft. I want to remind you that the Nick Cattle Show is brought to you by Warzone Paintball and Airsoft. Warzone has 9 maps on 30-plus acres of land, multiple villages, hilltop forts, paintball, airsoft, kid versions of paintball and airsoft, something for every age group starting at 6+. You show up with jeans, good shoes, long sleeve shirt, and they will handle the rest. It means the world to me that Warzone Paintball and Airsoft is sponsoring this show. It helps us. It supports us financially. It keeps us going. So if you guys, if you gals love paintball, you love airsoft, you want to get involved, check those guys out. They're in North Kingston, Rhode Island. Warzone Paintball and Airsoft, casual, low-key. The phone number is 401-228-6366. That's 401-228-6366. Tell them the Nick Cattle Show sent you. And again, thanks to Warzone Paintball and Airsoft for signing a sponsorship deal with us, because it does mean the world to me. It helps me continue to do this podcast and survive as we try to continue to build the community and this podcast, period, end of sentence. All right, we'll get to the draft in a minute. Couple of super chats coming in. What holes do you think they still need to fill now that the draft is over? Again, that true wide receiver one, I still think you need to fill that. You absolutely hope that maybe Javon Baker can become that guy, can potentially develop into a number one. But I would still feel much more comfortable if they had a veteran wide receiver one who is proven in the league. So I think that's a spot. Tackle, we'll see. I'll get into that in a little bit, but you can absolutely look at left tackle and wonder, do they have enough there with Chuck Sikora and Wallace, who they drafted over the weekend? Do they have enough at left tackle? I think those are the two spots. Free safety, what do you do? Are you planning on Marte Mapu and Joshua Bledsoe to battle it out at free safety? That's another question I would have. And by the way, Mekhi Becton signed yesterday with the Philadelphia Eagles. That was a guy that was on my radar for someone who could possibly plug and play at left tackle if need be. Eugene R. Keep on, tough week. Agree with the Barmore assessment. Cheers from Vienna, Moscow. How about that? Thank you, Eugene. All the way from Vienna. Checking in. It's nighttime. Good evening, Eugene. Good evening. I appreciate you reaching out. I love that. I absolutely love when people from different countries all across the world are reaching out. Blows my mind that people are watching this podcast from Vienna, just chilling out. So I appreciate you, Eugene. That means a lot, man. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And last week, I got to thank all of you. As we get into the draft talk, you were all tremendous. You were all tremendous. The numbers rivaled the numbers from free agency week. We put a lot of work in. We spent a lot of time together talking about this draft, leading into the draft. And you guys were there with me. The numbers show it throughout the draft. We did a 90-minute podcast on Friday night. Can't say enough about you guys. So I appreciate every single one of you who have been here, especially the ones that have been here, the OGs from day one, and spreading the word. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. If you keep doing that, we'll keep building. All right, let's get to the draft. Again, Christian Barmore, that contract extension, absolutely freaking love it. It was a top priority of this offseason. Check one off the list for Elliot Wolf yet again. Love it. Here's the first thing I'll say about the draft. It made sense. And that might not make sense to you, but I hope it does. The draft made sense. There wasn't anything that happened that made me look around and go, what? Maybe one thing. And by the way, McTogger from Romania checking in. Hello, Romania. I appreciate you. Love you. So there was no, we're going to trade down in the first round and draft the guard. There was no, we're going to trade up in the fourth round and draft a kicker. There were none of those moves. I could look at the draft and it made sense to me. We walked into this draft and what have we been saying? We've been saying this entire offseason, they better go offense in the draft. If they go defense in the draft, I'm going to lose my mind. And I agreed with that, at least through the first 3 or 4 rounds. I did not want to see a second-round draft pick defensive guy. I know people wanted, or at least some people were talking about Cooper DeJean. I understand. Cooper DeJean's a good football player. And I understand that, cornerback / safety is a need for this team. I get that. But to me, it was all about the offense. It was all about the offense early and often. And it made sense. 7 of their 8 picks over the weekend on offense. Offense, offense, offense. And that's why when we talked about this offseason and we talked about this idea of weaponizing the offense, all these people were going bananas early on in free agency. Where's the offense? I thought they were going to weaponize. What have I said? What have I been saying over the past couple of months? I have said, I've stayed consistent. If they went into this draft and did not address some of the needs offensively that we all saw, that's when the hooting and hollering should begin. You can hoot and holler all you want, but doing that in like early March doesn't make much sense to me. Mid-March doesn't make much sense to me. And so they walked into this draft and they pounded the offense. They weaponized the offense over and over and over and over again. Let's talk about the wide receivers. You can get my full thoughts about Jalen Polk from Friday night's podcast. Again, we went 90 minutes in that podcast. Jalen Polk, he is your quintessential do-everything type wide receiver. He's the guy that can play inside. He can play outside. He's not afraid of going into the middle of the field. He's that kind of receiver, right? He's your do-it-all. Then they come back in the 4th round with Javon Baker. Loved the Javon Baker pick. Drake May and Javon Baker were my 2 favorite picks in this draft. I look at it, and these grades we give, I'll give them an A+ for the Drake May and Javon Baker picks. And Javon Baker fits. What have we talked about? What have we talked about for the past couple of months? We've talked about this idea that the Patriots need an X receiver. Go out and get an X receiver. Go out and do it. And drafting Javon Baker gives them a legitimate opportunity to have an explosive X receiver. That's what this guy is. So you drafted Jalen Polk, somebody who can run all the different routes. He needs to refine his route running, no doubt, but he can play inside, he can play outside, he can run the slants. All those middle of the field routes that this AVP offense is going to showcase. Jalen Polk is your inside guy, outside guy. You can move him around, bunch of things he can do. Then you went out and you got your outside receiver. You went out and you got your true X and Baker. So Polk and Baker, they fit. I'm going to throw these up when I see them. Martin says hello from England. Hello, Martin. Appreciate you. So you've got your explosive guy on the outside who can make plays downfield in Baker, and you've got your do-it-all kind of guy. Do-it-all kind of guy with Jalen Polk. They went offensive tackle in the 3rd round. Now, we'll get to that in a little bit. We'll get to the offensive tackle spot because we still have questions about Kaden Wallace. We had questions about Kaden Wallace on Friday night. I'm glad they got a tackle. The $1 million question is, will they be able to move him to the left? Elliot Wolf believes it. Gerard Mayo believes it. The offensive staff believes it. If they can move Wallace to the left and he works out, then nobody is going to be complaining about that pick 3 years from now. If they can't move him to the left side, then you look at that and you scratch your head. But they believe they can move him to the left side. So you got your offensive tackle in the 3rd round, right? So you go quarterback at 3, then you go wide receiver in the 2nd round. You come back, you get an offensive tackle in the 3rd round. You get Javon Baker in the 4th round, another receiver. And then in the 7th round, I thought it was a fantastic pick, great value, Jaheim Bell. Taking a shot at Jaheim Bell in the 7th round. He's a tight end that is full of yards after the catch ability, right? He brings that yak, and we talk about the AVP system. If you watch the AVP system, you think David Njoku last year in Cleveland to have an athletic tight end who can make plays after the catch, make plays out of the flat, and that's really what Bell does. Bell makes plays out of the flat. Bell can make plays after the catch. So I thought that was a really good pick, given that it was the 7th round. And we talked about drafting a developmental tight end. Many people thought, Bell would have been a 4th round guy or a 5th round guy. I think some Patriots fans would have been fine with Bell being a 5th round pick if they had a 5th round pick. But here you are getting him in the 7th. I thought that was a fantastic pick given where he was. The only pick on defense is somebody, Marcellus Dial, who, by the way, if you've read some things about Dial, he could actually end up going to free safety. I believe it was Evan Lazar that I was reading last night. Evan does a great job, friend of the program here, Patriots.com. But Dial is somebody who he can move around. He can play outside corner. He could play slot. He might play free safety for them. So that might be your lottery ticket at free safety. See how he works out. If you want to transition him full time, see how he takes to it. So when you spent on defense, you spent on a position that you need. You need cornerback depth. You need a free safety. So it made sense to pick Dial in that spot. Now, what I would also say is you have competition in the cornerback room between young guys. You've got Isaiah Bolden, you've got Alex Austin, and you've got Dial. Throw them all into the mix and hope one of them pops. If one of them pops, you might be able to move Jonathan Jones inside of the slot or back him to free safety. You might be able to move Marcus Jones back to free safety. They've built competition between young cornerbacks, and you hope that one of those guys ends up popping. And they took the late round lotto ticket on the big-armed freak Joe Milton, which I loved. And I know some people are kind of against that pick. I loved it. 6th round pick, you throw a dart, pick the guy with the elite trait in the arm, see what you get. So everything made sense to me. Everything made sense. Almost everything. Overall, 30,000 feet, I agreed with the vast majority of this draft in what they did, right? And I'm not talking about who they picked. I'm talking about what they did, the philosophy behind it, the positions that they were targeting. It all made sense to me, except for maybe one. Again, we'll get to it a little bit. Let's jump into the super chat here. I believe I have at least one super chat that I haven't gotten to just yet. Justin TF Patriot, heard Dial might get moved to free safety. Yeah, we just touched on that a little bit there, Justin. Evan Lazar wrote that he did play some safety in college. The idea is he might be more of a safety because his quickness, like the cone time and everything, he's not necessarily the most quick dude. So when you look at his athleticism and how it translates, many might tell you that it translates better as a free safety versus a corner because he might get, he might have his issues at the line of scrimmage because of that short, quick ability that you need at that position, right? So you might be better off at free safety. So we'll see how it works out. Another takeaway from this draft, the risk-reward approach. They took a big swing at number 3 with Drake May, right? They took that big swing at number 3, and then they came back, and I thought they went for, as Greg Bedard said it to me during our podcast on Friday night as well, then they went for doubles, and I think Greg's right. So you went for the big swing. You went for the home run at quarterback at number 3, which you should have done. We talked about it plenty. But then you came back and you got Polk and Wallace, 2 guys who are experienced, 2 guys who should be good for you. Should be good for you. Now, again, Wallace might be right side instead of left side. We'll see. But I don't think anybody has beef that Wallace is not an NFL player. He's an NFL-level player. And then Polk, again, some would say you might have reached, and we'll talk about the reaches in a little while. But Polk is somebody who, his floor is high. His ceiling might not be as high as other guys that were drafted around him, but you looked for doubles. So you went for the home run at 3, and then you went for a couple of doubles in the 2nd and 3rd round. How about this? Kookaburra, watching from Melbourne, Australia. Love the wide receivers, a real 1-2 punch. I would try to do an Australian impression, but it would fail horribly. But thank you. I appreciate you reaching out from Australia. Give us that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Look at this. Got another one. Athens, Greece. Keep up the good work, man. Thank you, Christos from Greece. Man, we're hearing all over the world today. It's awesome. So I like the idea of the risk reward. You take the big shot at 3. You go for the doubles. You go for the doubles in the 2nd and 3rd rounds because you took that big swing at the top of the draft. Now let's talk about Plan A, because unfortunately, Plan A was ruined. Plan A was the Plan A that all of us discussed. When we talked about it, when we talked about the idea of what the Patriots could do, we said drafting Drake May at 3 and then moving back into the 1st round for a tackle or wide receiver made a lot of sense. And that's precisely what Wolf tried to do. Mike Reese wrote this yesterday, ESPN.com, of course. Reese, one of the best, super credible. He wrote, the Patriots had a trade offer on the table to the Bills late in the 1st round on Thursday night. According to a source, the Bills were at pick number 32. But instead of dealing with their AFC East rival Patriots for number 34, they chose Carolina's offer to slide back one spot to number 33. Reese writes, Xavier Legette and Keon Coleman were selected at 32 and 33 before the Patriots traded back from 34. So one can deduce the Patriots had either Legette or Coleman as their target, or possibly both. My hunch is Legette. Mike Giardi also reported that the Patriots tried multiple deals to move back into the first. So the plan that we talked about was the plan that they tried to execute. But Buffalo gave them the Heisman Trophy. They weren't doing it. They were not having it. They were not going to have it. They were not going to trade within their division. So they took the Carolina deal. But the plan A was, Drake May at 3, move back into the late first round to draft Legette. Could you imagine? I mean, I would have been over the freaking moon. Over the moon if they pulled off plan A. But you can't force a team to make a deal. You can't put the proverbial gun to their head and say, you've got to do it. You have to make this deal with us. I would also say this, because some might argue, I've already heard this argument. Well, Elliot Wolf wasn't willing to pay the premier price to move into the late first round. We have to understand that Wolf is trying to rebuild a football team. He is not in the same position as some of these other teams. So for the Patriots to give up the premium package to move into the late first round, that is a much more difficult thing to pull off for this team, given what they're trying to do. They're trying to build for the next 2 or 3 years. If you give up more compensation than you want, if you give up future draft picks, now you have to look at it. What is the difference in Elliot Wolf's mind? What is the difference between drafting Legette and giving up the compensation that you had to give up versus drafting Jalen Polk? Is Legette, and I'm not saying this is a question for you or for me, it's a question for Elliot Wolf. Is Legette that much better than Jalen Polk in your evaluation that you can justify overpaying for Legette? Other teams, they're in that position of like win now. Carolina, they're trying to win now. The owner was trying to win now. They got their quarterback last year. So it's not apples to apples when we talk about those things. But plan A was what we thought plan A would be. Draft Drake May and then get back into the first round for either a tackle or a receiver. And we know the tackle run happened. And at that point, when you got to the 20s, I mean, maybe Tyler Guyton was the one guy you could say you can trade in to draft because he went to Dallas at 29. But other than that, the tackle run happened. So, it's the way it is. When you're rebuilding, you're not going to sell your ass to get a wide receiver as much as somebody else might that's not trying to rebuild for the next 2 or 3 years. Super chat. Eric jumps in. I watched 5 games of Wallace. Kid has good pass pro, good size. In the 3rd round, probably the best tackle on the board. He has a shot to contribute. I want to get to that next. The reach idea. I want to get to that in a minute. I'm glad that Eric brought that up. I said this on Friday night. Look, I'm honest with all of you. I try to be as genuine as possible. I don't know Kaden Wallace from a hole in the wall. We had people on Friday night trying to tell me that, that was a major reach because they're looking at these mock drafts. They're looking at these rankings from all these pundits. I haven't seen Wallace play football. I can tell you. I mean, I've seen Penn State play football, but I wasn't eyeing the right tackle. I wasn't watching all 22 on the right tackle. Maybe Eric was. Eric likes him. Good. I'm glad to hear from people that like Wallace. But for me, I don't know him. I can't tell you if he can play the left. I can tell you what people are saying they think. But I myself, I can't tell you if Kaden Wallace is a left tackle or not. I'm not an expert on offensive line play and the transition from college to the NFL. I could tell you moving to the left side is difficult, not the easiest thing in the world, but guys have done it. But I've seen Drake May play. I've seen Jalen Polk play. Like those guys, I have more of a handle on. So maybe Wallace will work out. And if Wallace can make the move to left tackle, then you look at this draft, and I think the people that are questioning that Wallace pick would feel a lot better, right? Because then you get Drake May, you get Jalen Polk, and then you come back with a guy who's your future left tackle. The question is, and we're not going to be able to answer it until we see him at camp, can he move to the left side? Super chat after the huddle. Give me your starting offensive lineup, rookies including, and a player outside of Ayuk and Debo we could possibly trade for. Looking forward to speaking to you on the show soon. Yes, I look forward to that, ATH. So, look, right now, Brissett, starting quarterback. Stevenson, obviously, is your starting running back. I don't think they'll start May at the beginning of the season. I think they'll wait at least a little while, if not the whole year. And then I look at wide receiver. It's a little difficult because there's so many unknowns. How will the rookies handle it? But I think Jalen Polk will end up being a starter. I think Kendrick Bourne will end up being a starter if his knee's okay. Pop Douglas, obviously, a starter as well. Then I think you got a battle, between Javon Baker, Tyquan Thornton, Juju Smith-Schuster, KJ Osborne, whoever really pops from that group. But I feel pretty comfortable that Jalen Polk is going to be a producer from day one just because of the player he is. I'm not telling you he's going to be a stud wide receiver one, but I do think Jalen Polk will help you immediately. You have to play Pop Douglas, obviously. He is your slot guy. He produced so well last year, so Pop will absolutely be out there a lot. And if Kendrick Bourne is healthy, given the contract they just gave him, I would imagine that Kendrick Bourne will be there as well an awful lot. The rest, competition, you're trying to figure it out, And you're trying to see which one of the other guys will show up. Will Baker show up more? Will Thornton actually show that he's still got something left? I'm not believing in that until I see it. But I think that the Osbornes of the world, Osborne, Baker, and Tyquan Thornton will all be in that mix. Juju, I don't know if Juju's on this football team by June. We'll see. As far as receivers they could possibly trade for, look, I think until Brandon Ayuk signs a contract, we have to continue to have the conversation about that being a possibility. Ayuk could still get dealt. Debo could still get dealt. Debo fits a little bit better now because you have Javon Baker, right, as your ex. So moving forward, you don't have as much urgency. But I think, you could still see Ayuk. You could still see Debo. Although I think San Francisco is closer to not trading them than they are to trading them now that we've moved on from the draft. T. Higgins is still out there. Cortland Sutton is still out there. And, let's not forget, none of these guys got dealt. So it's not like the Patriots missed out on an opportunity. None of them have been dealt. So until they get dealt, then we got to say those teams are not willing. All right, let's get to the idea of reaches, okay? The reach narrative. The reach narrative needs context because everybody falls in love with these mock drafts. Got to pull up Thomas here because he's from Italy. What's up, Thomas? Want to say hi to Italy out there. Love Italy. I am part Italian. My father's side is huge Italian. So I appreciate it, Thomas. Thank you for saying hello. So the reach narrative, mocks and pundits and all of that versus true NFL rankings. We've said that before, right? True NFL rankings. What do NFL big boards say versus what these pundits are saying, what these mock drafts are saying? We don't know that. What I will tell you is if you look at positional rankings, and Dane Brugler is one of the best in the business because he ranks all the positions. And he will tell you, okay, this is offensive tackle number 9, offensive tackle number 17. So when you look at that, here's how you match Brugler to where the guys actually went, okay? So Drake May was ranked as QB2. He was the 3rd quarterback taken. Jalen Polk was ranked as the 13th wide receiver. He was picked 10th. He was the 10th wide receiver taken. Kaden Wallace, who was one of the more polarizing picks in this draft, he was ranked by Brugler as the 14th offensive tackle. He was the 12th tackle off the board. Layden Robinson, the pick that I did not like, he was ranked as the 12th guard. He was the 9th guard taken. And finally, Javon Baker was ranked, according to Brugler, in his rankings, as the 20th wide receiver. He went 18th. So we have to include the idea of runs that happen at certain positions in the real boards that these teams have. Nobody, when you look at positional consensus or positional rankings, rather, from Dane Brugler, nobody was a massive reach positionally. QB2 went QB3. Wide receiver 13 went wide receiver 10. Offensive tackle 14 went offensive tackle 12. Offensive guard 12 went offensive guard 9. Wide receiver 20 went wide receiver 18. So it's not as if they were reaching for these positions when other guys were available behind them that were like, whoa, how could you not draft that guy? It wasn't that kind of a situation during this draft. Where are you drafting? What specific opportunities do you have? What was the run of players before you made your pick? What were the trades that were on the board? How much were teams asking for? These are all the details that we have no idea about. Final takeaway for me with the draft: the offensive staff best be good. Now, I did not like drafting Layden Robinson in the 4th round. I did not like taking a guard at the top of the 4th round. You took Cole Strange in the 1st. You took 3 interior offensive linemen last draft. You signed Leverett to a deal as well to be that kind of swing guard for you. You have depth, and you have guys that you've got to develop on the interior offensive line. I did not like picking Robinson at the top of the 4th round. Now, if you told me they drafted a guard in the 6th round, I'd be more open to it. But at the top of the 4th, at the other positions and the players that were available out there, to take a guard at the top of the 4th round, to me, given what you have on the roster currently, I didn't like it. Now, maybe I'll have egg on my face, and maybe he'll end up being great. I will say there's one caveat to the Robinson pick, and I tweeted this out. In real time, so don't tell me it's hindsight. If Cole Strange is not healthy, if Cole Strange is banged up really bad, then I understand the Robinson pick more. And that might be true, because we've heard that Cole Strange might not be ready for the season, or at least camp time. So if that's the case, then that Robinson pick makes more sense, because Antonio Mafi is not ready. He's raw. We saw that last year. So James Andrews is more of a center than he is a guard. So if you're telling me that Cole Strange has serious issues, then I understand that Robinson pick much more. That's the caveat. I will give them the break on that. They know the medical. I don't. If Cole Strange is a mess, if they don't think he's going to be ready by camp, if they don't think he's going to be ready maybe by the beginning of the season, then drafting Robinson makes a lot of sense. Now, yes, Robinson is a right guard in college. Can he move to the left side, or do they think they can move City So to the left side, or do they just want Robinson as insurance and they can play Leverett on the left side? All of these things will get figured out. But if Strange is donezo, at least early on in the year, then drafting Robinson makes more sense to me. If Strange is healthy, that's a different story. So we'll see what's going on with Strange. If Strange is not out there and he's really struggling, then I get it. Then I totally get it. On the surface, head scratcher, but if Strange is in trouble, I get the Robinson pick. But this offensive staff best be good, because the Patriots now, Elliot Wolf, you've got a first-time head coach. You've got AVP who hasn't called plays since 2009 outside of a couple of games due to COVID with Kevin Stefanski. But you're looking at this coaching staff, and you're putting a lot on their plate. They've got to develop both May and Joe Milton now. So AVP, McCartney, those guys, Ben McAdoo, they have to make sure that they can develop these young quarterbacks. And then you're putting a lot on Scott Peters and Kugler. Peters and Kugler need to be great. And one thing that's been overlooked, because it's the offensive line, is that they have not had good coaching on the offensive line for like 3 years now, 4 years. Peters is very respected. Kugler is very respected. And a lot is going to be on those guys to work out this offensive line, because there are questions on this O-line. There are questions. Can Kaden Wallace move to the left side? Can Robinson move to the left side if you need him to? You've got Michael Wenu, first-time, full-time tackle. You gotta make the best of that. You got to make it the best of that if you're Peters and you're Kugler. So the development of these guys is going to be huge. Their offensive line coaching has to be very, very good. If not, you could see a lot of problems. Chuck Okorafor, right? Chuck's Okorafor, if you're moving him to the left side, which certainly sounds like it could be the plan, you've got to get him playing at least good left tackle. And he hasn't played left tackle consistently since college. So Peters and Kugler are just gigantic this season. They're offensive line coaches, I get it. But their value in that room is going to be huge. They need to get it right. Okorafor needs to be right. Whatever happens at left guard, it's got to be right. You've got to transition Wallace to the left side. You've got to do a good job there. You got to make sure that Michael Wenu holds his water on the right side. Like, there's a lot going on up front. They got a lot of people that they can shuffle in, but this camp is going to be very, very competitive. This camp is going to be crazy competitive. Offensive line, bunch of competitions. Wide receiver room, bunch of competitions. Cornerback for that second spot, I think you'll see a lot of competition. And it's going to be up to Kugler and Peters to get the most out of those guys up front, and then pick your best five early and roll with it. Not a constant shuffle. Pick your best five and move forward. So if I'm looking at this draft from 30,000 feet, before I bid you adieu, and don't forget to give us that like. Don't forget to subscribe. We're over an hour, but it was worth it. Christian freaking Barmore signing that contract extension. Got me doing cartwheels. And we had to talk about the draft. So don't forget to like and subscribe, rate and review. Again, for those that began this podcast, I apologize for the first 5-6 minutes. The audio was not great. My microphone, for whatever reason, was not linked with the stream. But we fixed that. Thanks to, I think it was Mike N. So 30,000 feet. I love the Drake May pick. I love the Javon Baker pick. I really liked Jalen Polk. I really liked Milton. And I know some people don't like the Milton idea. I really liked Milton. And I really liked Jaheim Bell in the 7th round. Loved it. Well, really liked it. Don't loved it. Really liked it. Wallace, tough. To be determined. If you tell me Wallace can play the left side, then I'm good with that pick. So TBD. Let's see what happens with him in June. Robinson was the pick that I didn't like. But again, if Cole Strange is damaged goods, the Robinson pick makes a lot more sense. Marcellus Dial, I'm fine with. 6th round lottery ticket. Cornerback, free safety. Joshua Bledsoe was a late round pick. He has improved. So maybe you get something from Dial. My overall grade, that means absolutely nothing from 3 years. 3 years from now. My grade is a B. And I'm telling you, I went pick by pick by pick and gave each pick a grade. And then I averaged that grade. So May was an A+, Baker was an A+, Polk was a B, Milton was a B, Bell was a B+, Wallace was a C, Robinson was a C-, Dial was a C. I averaged all of those up, and I came out with, I think it was an 84, which gives me a B grade for this class. Could end up being an A, could end up being a D. We have no idea. Could end up being an F. You don't grade a draft really until 2 years down the road. But right now, my initial gut, that it was a good draft. It was a good draft. That made a lot of sense. And Mike Larry brings up the UDA running back. UDFA running back looks good. Yeah, I will say this. Like, I think it's what, Fenwick, right? Alonzo Highsmith is really good when it comes to running backs. When it comes to running back evaluations, he is known throughout the NFL to be dynamite at finding running backs. Look at Green Bay and the long track record of running backs in late rounds and UDFAs that they utilized that ended up being pretty damn good backs at the NFL level. Highsmith is somebody, because of his background, because of his background, he usually is able to spot running backs. So the one UDFA I keep my eye on, I agree, is I think it's Fenwick. Off the top of my head, I think it's Fenwick. But the UDFA running back with Alonzo Highsmith, with that link, is one I'm going to be watching for, because they do need a young back. And Highsmith's track record tells us he usually gets a lot out of that position. So don't sleep on that guy. Don't sleep on that guy at all. All right. I appreciate every single one of you standing by me. Great day for Patriots fans with Barmore getting the extension coming off of Deshaun Fenwick. Thank you, Pratik. Appreciate you. Deshaun Fenwick. So coming off of a draft that I thought was a B grade, I think a lot of people thought it was better than that. If Drake May hits, does it even matter? Probably not. But off of a draft with at least a B grade, you follow that up on Monday with Christian Barmore's extension. I think you had a good 4 or 5 days here as a Patriots fan. I appreciate every single one of you that stand by this podcast. You invest your time. Some of you invest your money. I appreciate you. I'm going to tap out now. We're over an hour. If something else breaks, which who knows the way this is going, I'll be back later on. But if not, we're back tomorrow. We got a lot more to cover about this draft. The fallout from this draft, we're going to be talking about it all week long. Again, thanks for joining me. As always, I appreciate every single one of you.